Peace, Oakland. What's up? This is your host, Seneca Scott. We're back with Gotham, Oakland on Wednesday, April 16th, the day after. We're going to talk about Oakland special election, District 2, of course, the mayor, and Measure A. I got my good friend and fellow organizer, badass Edward Escobar. You may see this man on the news on a weekly basis as he travels around the city, making sure that he holds any and everyone accountable for their failures for neighbors and the business community. He is one of the leaders of the recall of both the mayor and DA. He is just all around doing his thing always. Edward Escobar, peace, peace. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So, what are you thinking? How you feeling about the election?
I feel very positive. I think that we're going to see some great changes for Oakland and the entire Bay Area because Oakland is the epicenter here on the East Bay for the entire Bay Area.
So you're not worried about Barbara Lee catching back up and winning like Shin did back in 2022 at the last minute? Hail
Mm,
Mary, ranked choice voting?
yeah, I don't get worried. That's
Oh, you
those are
don't
the kinds of things
I don't
you take care of business, getting concerned, address the concerns. That's how we get business done.
spoken like a true organizer. Well, I got some numbers to bring up that we can talk through what's going on, go through some articles that have come out. I think the latest Oakland side article was very telling about the narrative that's already being drafted by the progressives in anticipation of potentially losing this election. And so let's first talk about the vote count. So here we have the April 15th, 2025 City of Oakland special municipal election. The entire county. You can see that, right, Edward?
Yeah, I mean it's small, but I could see it.
So vote by mail. Just to vote by mail. What we saw yesterday, I believe were early votes or something, I'm not sure. But this is pretty much how many ballots were returned, not who voted for who, but just how many ballots were returned. So first we have 73,000 out of 250,000, just 30%. And we may have added another 10% day of. So very low turnout. But if it's total of 73,000 and we only saw, I think, 40,000 yesterday, we got a few more votes coming. The Democratic Party breakdown is 57,000 of those votes. So no party preference is 10,490 with 3,000 Republicans. So 1,305 or so either no party or Democrats. Peace and Freedom only has 349. So of course we have bulk Democrats, 68.4%, but not 100% by any means. And that 20% here can change elections. What are your thoughts on the turnout being pretty low? And did anybody think about tax day when they set this special election?
A couple things that we should keep in mind is that with the roundups of illegals, I think in District 5, which is heavily Hispanic, I'm 100% Hispanic, by the way. I'm Cuban and Puerto Rican, fluent in Spanish. And so District 5.
The ICE is kicking out the undocumented, so it's making people scared to vote, but they can't vote anyway, right?
Well, it's not just that, it's just the people that it's questionable that they don't want to put themselves in harm's way, because what I've heard in many cases is they'll snag people and then they'll verify later. So people don't want to be hassled by that. So let's keep in mind that a third.
Gitmo, right?
What's that?
There's somebody in Gitmo right now.
Yeah, Guantanamo. Yeah, that's a naval base in Cuba. Yes, and that's where they took a lot of the terrorists out there. But just to remind people, or in case they don't know, that over a third of Oakland's population is Hispanic. So I think that really impacted you. You initially mentioned about the tax season, right? All taxes were due on April 15th. And if they are choosing between voting, and a lot of people are procrastinators, that's just as Americana as it gets. So if they're choosing between paying their taxes and getting hit with penalties versus making a vote in the special election, well, we already know the answer.
Mm.
So I think it's a combination of things. There's also just the other element of just public safety, about people going to places where people gather. They don't feel comfortable. So I think there's a number of different elements that are affecting the election outcomes. And I think that, really the powers that be want less people's voices to be heard. Now, you had also, I heard in your other podcast, you mentioned about that they had reduced the numbers of voting locations. So what's that all about?
Well, it's a special election, so I think it was probably innocent. It's just,
Really? Are you
I
serious
mean,
on that one? Or you just, is
no,
that tongue in cheek?
no, the number's not innocent. The number's innocent. Whether they were not, whether it was not. Let me pull it
Yeah.
up.
It's all about making it as convenient as possible for people to participate in the electoral process.
So here were the voting centers. Here are the voting centers. We only had 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And
So
what's the standard number, though?
well, let's start with West Oakland, a considerable, a historic Black neighborhood, and part of the Flatlands. You see a single. There's not a single one here. Is San Pablo? Nope. 10th Street. Where's that at? Nope. 11th and 10th. Where's that at? Let's look. Okay, got one in West Oakland and 10th Street. That's it. So I could have probably went a little bit closer instead of having to go all the way downtown, but I went downtown to 14th Street. Oh crap!
Yeah, 14th is not, I know 14th Street.
Well, that's downtown, so we only had one in West Oakland, and then there's one on International. I guess there was a pretty much equal disbursement, but there were only 9. The combination of tax day and not having your normal location there for you, I think is going to really reduce day of turnout. But
Correct.
that being said, let's look at some videos about what people are saying about the election, and then we can comment on them.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with some easy ones.
Mayor's race has not been called, but a clear leader has emerged.
Yes, after 9 rounds of ranked choice voting and eliminations, former council member Lauren Taylor seems like he's on a path for victory. About 1,100 votes currently separate the two. Now, there are some late mail-in ballots that have not been counted. The registrar has not provided an estimate of exactly how many there may be. So ABC 7 News was at Taylor's watch party last night. He told us he is cautiously optimistic about his early lead.
We are rich with pride that persists in love for all things 510.
ABC 7 News was in Oakland, where nearly 350 of her supporters gathered to watch those results come in.
Very tough campaign. Make no mind. A lot of money's involved. A lot is at risk here in Oakland. We have to really be very vigilant right now with these votes as they come in, because we know that people just mailed them today, yesterday, and so it's going to be a few days.
The Oakland mayor's race has not been called.
What do you think about that?
Comment? A lot of people then made the comment regarding Barbara Lee that for someone who'd been in Congress for almost 27 years, in speaking in Congress and speaking with many people, like, her presentation skills are really lackluster. I think that she just basically phoned it in.
She's older. She's 79 years old. I think she's pretty sharp for 79.
You do things enough times, you could do it with your eyes closed, especially when you've been doing it for so long.
You're right. No, she doesn't have a command of Oakland's issues, if that's what you mean.
Well, both in part presentation skills, speaking skills, and also the connection with the ground here, what's going on in Oakland. Now, she said, she even admitted that she was not in Oakland 4 days out of the week. So that's more than 50% of her life was spent outside
Whoa.
of Oakland.
Doesn't she? I mean, she lives here. I do agree with you. We know that Lauren Taylor spent most of his life here in Oakland,
Yeah,
coming back after college and blah, blah, blah.
right.
But, I want to talk about, most people want one thing on their mind. Who do we think is going to win? But I want to talk about that sales tax for a second. Let's watch this quick. I haven't seen this yet, so we can react to it.
In Oakland with the mayoral race on the line, but another issue on the ballot could also have big consequences.
Voters also will weigh in on Measure A, a half-cent sales tax increase that would bring the city sales tax to the highest in the state. Oakland leaders say they need the new money to fill a large budget gap, but some voters tell Dial In it's more complicated than that.
Nobody likes to pay more,
Darling.
but some Oakland voters feel like they have no choice but to tax themselves if they want a functioning city. Live music, sunny weather, and good vibes outside Open Mind Music on this National Record Store Day.
We have 20 people in the store right now. It's great.
But store owner Henry Wimmer fears a higher sales tax could have his cash register singing the blues.
I think that can have some weight, and that can mean that maybe a customer doesn't come back as frequently, or maybe they don't buy as much or as often.
On Tuesday, voters will decide whether to increase the city's sales tax from 10.25 to 10.75%. Oakland officials say the measure would generate $30 million annually for the general fund. The city was facing a $129 million budget deficit this fiscal year.
I voted yes because I think that we need more money to pay for valuable services here in town.
Longtime Oakland resident Al Flores says it took him nearly 40 minutes to reach a 911 dispatcher to report a burglary in progress. He fears even longer wait times if the city makes more public safety cuts.
I feel like we need to do it. I feel like no one likes to do it. No one likes to pay more in sales taxes, but the alternative is pretty bleak.
But other residents argue that Oaklanders already pay some of the highest taxes in the region, yet still lack basic services. They want the city to better manage the money it already has.
I'm going to vote no. I believe the sales tax is way too high as it is.
Sarah Marth worries the increase would hurt low-income families and drive shoppers to make big purchases elsewhere.
When I want to buy a car or a larger purchase, I would avoid having it in this higher tax climate.
Henry says thriving small businesses benefit the city's bottom line. He understands the need for balance and says he's ready to adjust based on what voters decide.
We need more success, and hopefully the arrow points up.
I didn't see any Black-owned businesses, or Latino-owned businesses.
No. And small business is the gateway out of being a working stiff your whole life. And that is the pathway for the American dream. And so that's being sabotaged, to be quite honest. But let's talk about really what Measure A is about. It's scapegoating small businesses, but it's also increasing the cost of living for consumers, the residents.
Well, she brought something up here that I thought was very important that I didn't think about before. If you look at, what is it, a point something percent, like 50 cents?
0.5%, half a percent.
So for every $10, it's 50 cents.
But it adds up for big purchases, though.
That's the point I was about to make. So if you're in the business of selling something expensive in Oakland, immediately it's going to make it hard for you to compete. So let's say you sell jewelry or furniture or anything that has a price point that your artist. You're not going to want to open a brick and mortar in Oakland, which means there's going to be less taxes and revenue coming in, because why would I go buy something for $1,000? Now I'm paying $50 more.
Right. Instead of enticing businesses, they should be doing everything to bend over backwards to accommodate and encourage businesses. And you don't tax them higher and say, oh yeah, we love you and support you businesses. That doesn't even make sense.
Well, Edward, what about the fact that the first guy they interviewed says when I called 911, it took X amount of time to respond.
Yeah, that has
I mean,
nothing to do with reality of what that's going to be used for. You have to look at what they've done in the past. They have
That's
Measure
the
NN for the street repair, right? What
Mhm.
happened to that? Wasn't used for it. This one's not specific as to where the money's going to go. And let's look at who's driving this. It's the Oakland Fire Association and led by Seth Ollier. They dropped like almost $500,000 to try to push this through. So when they say clean, safe streets, that's a misnomer. That's like a bait and switch. It's just to give people a false sense of feeling that they're actually doing something to help their community. And they say, oh, well, it's only going to be for 10 years. Come on, in 10 years, you think they're not going to raise the sales tax normally in 10 years? Of course they are. So what are they going to do when it hits 10 years, then drop off that extra 0.5% once they've already raised it another 1%? It doesn't make sense. But it does make dollars that's going to be redirected towards the nonprofit grifters in Oakland. That's
So
what
let's
it's for.
to your point. Let's actually look at Measure A because here in Gotham, Oakland, we do our homework and we show receipts. That's why I hear people watch the show; they learn things. So this ballot is titled "Ballot Title for Measure A." Shows a measure providing funding to help maintain City of Oakland programs, services, and facilities, such as public safety and police services, neighborhood crime prevention, fire protection, pothole and road repaving, shelter and housing for individuals and families experiencing homelessness, library and recreation services, playground and park maintenance, youth, senior, and cultural programs by enacting a 0.5% transaction sales and used for 10 years, providing approximately $29,800,000 annually for government to be adopted. So
So
it looks like hold on, let me programs, City of Oakland programs, services, both vague, facilities such as public safety, which could be interpreted anywhere from direct to the police to nonviolent intervention, neighborhood
fire.
crime prevention, another vague. It says police services, okay. Fire protection, that's pretty direct. Pothole and road repaving. Shelter and housing for individuals and families experiencing homelessness, so the unhoused families. And also library and recreation services, and also playground and park maintenance, and also youth, senior, and cultural programs, all with just under $30 million. That is
Sounds
really
amazing, right? I want that too. But the reality is it's not how as good as it appears. And that's how it's always been the bait and switch. They promise you the world and they don't even deliver a dirt lot at the end of the day.
well, I'm going to go through this slowly, the actual ordinance, to see if I can see anything.
And while you're looking for that, realize why this is happening is because of the fiscal failure of the Tao administration that's been a holdover, and you still have the same failed progressive policies that are still driving this dysfunction. They don't face the consequences of what they've done. They try to claim as if this is going to help them to prevent the bankruptcy that's basically already on its way. And that's not the case. It's too little and too late. Although the amount that they say that they're going to receive in taxes, I've heard that it's actually much higher that they will get, but they put a lower figure so it's more passable, so people won't reject it because it's too huge of a number that is going to be revealed that they're going to be extracting from people in taxes. So you really have to look at behind the scenes as to what they're out to do and why they are doing this. It's scapegoating their responsibility of their mismanagement. And they're pushing that onto, once again, small businesses and consumers and residents of Oakland. Unacceptable. Very unacceptable.
that's your tag phrase, by the way. It's unacceptable.
That's correct.
And you're right. So I'm reading through this, and those of you who have been scrolling along with me, if you read fast enough, can keep up. I'm just looking to see if there's anything um, exemptions. I mean, we saw how expansive it was. So I mean, just considering the variety of things that they're legally able to spend the money on, there's absolutely no guarantee that it's going to um, help
No,
public
because they
safety.
could repurpose the funds. Do you see how broad it was? Right?
Well,
And
they
let's
did
not
that
forget
before
what
for the park stuff. They always take money from measures when they want to for other stuff
exactly.
not
And
related.
let's not forget about the homeless industrial complex, right?
Oh, they suck up money real quick.
Right. And what's the term that you've popularized? Poverty pimps.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
This is added
basically the
30 more million
exploitation
dollars.
for profit of human suffering.
Yeah, I mean, to have any expectation, it might have been a lot smarter to just focus on one of those things. Like, we're going to raise this money for public safety, police, and mental health services. That way, it's
Right.
very narrow, and you can still do the. Like, I'm not a person who said that we just need a bunch of game busting, gun-toting cops, and that there's no room for theoretically what macro and these things are supposed to do. The problem is they just have not worked as advertised. There's been no oversight and no metrics of success. There's no proof of concept even being
Right.
demanded, and it just looked like a free for all on taxpayers' dime.
No oversight. As you said, no metrics, no oversight, no accountability, no restrictions. I mean, this is just free money that is being extracted from taxpayers. And when does it stop? It doesn't stop. Once they start that, they always continuously raise it. So that's where there's a
But then
real problem.
why do we keep voting for it? It seems that Oakland voters love to vote for more taxes. What do you think is going on? What is the
It's a bait
pathology
and
that's going
switch.
on
Look
there?
at the name, clean and safe streets. Who doesn't want clean and safe streets? First of all, they create the chaos, right? Then they go, oh, we have the solution. Here, just pay more money.
Mm.
And they scapegoat small business once again. Small business. Small business is the backbone of this country. You should support, that is the tax base for Oakland, for many towns and cities across the country. You have to take care of those. That's the core of commerce is in the small business. And apparently these folks that drive this legislation have never been in business for themselves. We have to realize that they lack the experience, they lack the sensitivity. So they demonize business owners, they demonize even housing providers, which provide about half of the tax base for the city. So they demonize. Why? Because then you could attack them more easily because
Well,
they're
aren't
the
they doing
bad
the
guys.
same? They do the same things themselves. But we know the iron law of woke hypocrisy is accuse others of what they're doing to sow confusion. Before we move on to District 2, but look, Measure A passed. We're going to pay more for things in Oakland, and then we will raise approximately 30 million, although those estimates could be impacted if people choose to vote with their dollars and spend money elsewhere in protest, especially when it comes to large purchases. So I wonder, did they factor in what would be their definition of a large purchase? Let's say we're talking about $1,000 or more, like a vehicle or something like that. And then what would be the impact on business models that either did luxury goods or services, or does that sales tax apply to a mechanic? Because vehicle repairs, if you're a mechanic in Oakland, if it does apply to mechanics or those services, then why would you go to a mechanic in Oakland for something expensive and pay $100 more or $50 more? Most people, especially when you're counting every dollar, are going to not do that. And, it's really concerning.
This is part of the austerity movement of charging more and more and giving less and less in return. So Look at what we already pay is some of the highest amounts in the area. And yet, what have they delivered? And yet they want more for giving us less?
Well, they're going
Like
to take more.
no
They're going to
protection services. Businesses are leaving Oakland. No protection services for the residents. No city services so that people can actually provide more housing. There's no support for the backbone of the city that's giving back and creating all the elements that are necessary for a fully functional city. What's this all about? Look who's driving it. Look who's driving it. A bunch of dysfunctional people that feel like they're untouchable. We've already proven them wrong with the recalls, right? So I think we need to remind these folks once again that you're not there forever and untouchable. If
Well,
you do not do your job
remind them
effectively,
how.
you can and will be removed.
Remind them how the election's over. We don't have another election until November 2026 for districts 2, 4, 6, and city auditor's position and mayor. Let me not forget the mayor.
Where there's recall elections, right?
Well, if there was to be a recall, if you were to push for a recall of the odd number districts that do not have an election to 2028, and you started soon, you could theoretically have the special election line up right with the general in 2026, thus
Correct.
not incurring special election cost on the city. That is entirely possible if you were to start soon, but I don't want to get ahead
and
of
those council members that are, the performance is subpar, is below acceptable. They should be put on notice that they are on the radar.
Well, hopefully they've already been put on notice, but I have to say, I believe if Barbara Lee pulls this off, a la Xing Tao, and she really does become Xing Tao 2.0, all the way down to how she wins in the 25th hour by a few hundred votes and a very less than 1%, then I think that they will be emboldened. They will believe that they have a mandate, and it'll be worse dealing with these people. So, they're saying that there's about 42,000 votes not counted. Let's talk about this before we get into District 2, because I want to get your thoughts. You work really hard on the District 2 election, so I want to get your take on that. So if there are 42,000 uncounted ballots, then it looks like Lee may only need to lead those ballots by 2.6%, which, again, she didn't lead this batch by any, so we don't know if that will happen. But if there's that many uncounted ballots, it's very possible Lee could win, unless the next data dump does not show the usual progressive slant for late mail-in ballots. So sweating bullets, I don't know. Another thing I mentioned, it was tax day. That throws a wrench in it. A lot of older people or people who procrastinate may have to make a choice between going to mail their taxes or filing taxes. We don't mail taxes anymore, but filing taxes and voting. And for a special election, they may have slipped their mind. And also, and I'll end with this. In January, no one thought this was possible. And so that in a win or lose 50-50 vote, which is pretty much what this was, as you saw, you got less than like 4%, 5% coming from the collective field against an extremely popular Congresswoman, Barbara Lee. That's a pretty big victory against phony progressive movement, even if she manages to eke it out. They don't have any more Barbara Lees laying around. I would say they do have a bench in terms of maybe Zach Unger, but they don't have anyone to trot out. They don't have anyone to bring out right now to save this movement, and especially with District 2 going down in flames. So they may have just used their last big move here, and Barbara Lee should have won in a landslide, but she didn't. She was supposed
Honestly, I think the name recognition is overrated because that was then.
I don't know about that, bro.
Allow me, because that was then. Her whole claim to fame is, what is it? The pushback against the Iraqi war?
Yeah.
Okay. How long ago was that? How long ago was that? And look at the age group, the voting public And if it didn't happen in the recent past, they forget about these things. And let me remind you that she is not a prolific fundraiser. You know, she has gone from term to term for close to 27 years, just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So what has she really done lately?
Well, I'll say this: that is a testament to the power of her name recognition, that she didn't have to raise funds to continue winning for 2 decades in Congress, and she could have continued to win had she not ran for Senate. Had she
Right.
not chosen to step down, nobody was running against Barbara Lee and winning Congress. She would have been able to pull a Nancy Pelosi and do it until she felt like stopping. And so she had a tremendous name recognition, as you can see by, here's where I go, low educated voters. What I mean by that is I don't mean people with low education, but low education voters.
Let me add to what you're saying there, though. Do you think she's ever campaigned this hard in her entire congressional career?
Oh no, I don't think she has. Damn it, I got a firewall. Hold on, shit. I'm trying to look at this map real quick. I hate to have to pull out the Oakland side. Oh well, we're gonna have to get the Oakland side some damn clicks. You know, Oakland side's a problem, but they put in the work. Nobody else wants to fund it and put in the work to try to cover Oakland. And by our polling, over 53% of registered voters get their news from the Oakland side. Very, very problematic. Well, anyway, I wanted to share this map. So taking a look at this map here. Whoa. Sorry about that, guys. Mayor. Okay. The purple is Lauren Taylor. The orange is Barbara Lee. That doesn't mean 100%. It means that they won the majority, the simple majority of that district. Now, it would be better to have a heat map. A heat map will show you the intensity of their wins, but this is have to do for now. And Rania Webb actually won a whole, she probably lives down here, so she won her neighborhood. That's pretty cool. And then I don't know who purple was. Oh, Eric Simpson. So Eric Simpson won one of his precincts. Very interesting. Probably right where they live at, right where their neighbors knew them.
Right. They probably walked around there many times over.
Rania also got one district in West Oakland. Very interesting. And she also won one district in the Hills. Very interesting. Again, probably places where she knew people.
Right.
She got a total of 435 votes. So we're not talking about a lot of votes here, but she did manage to win 2 of those districts. So with only one exception in the Hills, I just see that little bit of spot of orange up there in District 6. Everybody in the Hills voted for Lauren in terms of simple majority. So the Hills went for Lauren, and Chinatown went for Lauren, and the Flatlands went to Barbara. Now, here's the problem that I think you're going to incur. Progressives are going to try to concoct a narrative similar to what we did when we showed the map from the recalls, and that 70% of District 7 voted for the recall. And therefore, by showing that map, we claim that we have a mandate. They're going to show those maps and say that they have a majority of those people voted progressive. And here's why it's manipulative. The majority of those people voted for Barbara Lee's legacy and name. And because they don't pay that much attention, because the more you work and the lower your income, the less time you spend on politics. They already have a low voter turnout in those areas, which gives you more data points to add to my hypothesis that these are low information voters. So not non-educated, maybe that's not the best word. Low information voters voted
Low
for
to
Barbara Lee.
low to no information.
Low to no information voters, thank you, voted for Barbara Lee because of her name and her legacy. And she made you feel good. People
And
discount.
she pushed quite a bit in social media as well. and
She
did
did, but
commercial.
it's not about that. I think she was a food blogger. This campaign she ran was pretty weak, in my opinion. But here's what I think that she has a benefit from. And this is what's part that people underrate about politics. They want to put all these policies, and yes, that absolutely matters. That's the job at the end of the day. But what gets you elected is how you make people feel.
Right.
And for 2 decades, Barbara Lee made people in her congressional district feel as if they were represented. Even if it was just
what other comparison did they have? For 27 years, they had the same old. That's the whole thing.
But complacency should breed contempt, but it didn't in the case of Barbara Lee. And so the had to suggest, because she has this legendary status. Now, I took a lot of heat for going at the legend Barbara Lee. But as I said, and I hope she's heard this herself, you tell lies about me, I tell the truth about you. You put lies about me on our website to weaponize me against Lauren Taylor, basically letting white progressives use her to divide 2 Black people. And I told people that, she didn't really deliver the goods that she said she did. And that she traveled the world, and that she just looked like any other politician who's enriched herself considerably on public time and resources. And I thought that I made a credible argument. And here's why I believe I made a credible argument. You see, the election results are very close, so that message stuck to people. Number 2, not a single person could attack that argument. They only could attack me. And so their failure to be able to attack the argument and not even touch it and want to completely ignore anything that had to do with Barbara Lee's record suggests that that was really compelling information they wanted to downplay wisely. So here's the thing. It may infuriate you, but progressives are smart in the sense that why would they enter a debate they know they're going to lose? They'll rather be dishonest. They'll rather tell you defund never happened and then blame Lauren for defund. Remember, this is the story of defund the police. First, it was abolish and defund the police. Officer overseer, police are extension of slave catchers, and we must completely abolish police. That was 2020, and before 2020, that was 2016. The defund the police movement started here in Oakland with Cat Books and Quinn Delaney funding. Then they went to, it didn't work, reimagine public safety. That was the word salad because they didn't want to say more police. Then they dropped all of that. Now the public safety is the #1 priority. We need more police. They sound like moderates now. All the progressives' words sound like exactly like moderates in 2022 election that they demonized, or 2020 election that they more than demonized. They marched on their homes and tried to scare their families. And so before we move to District 2 and wrap up the hour, what do you think about that, the flatlands being low to no information? And how did we win the recalls then, if that is true? Or was Ching Tao just that hated? And if that's the case, how come they did not extend that hatred to Barbara Lee, who clearly supported her?
Well, but Barbara Lee wasn't Ching Tao. And let's not forget the identity politics here, because you had Blacks that are willing to vote against an Asian mayor, right? And you had Asians not willing to vote against an Asian mayor, right? But they'll vote against a Black DA. So there's this cross politics, identity politics that is being played because of the culture of what people have grown up with. So, and you know what? We understand that. It's like, hey, I got to support my peeps, right? That's what people say. That's what people think to do, because if you don't do it, the outside folks are not going to do it. So no matter how bad they behave, hey, you know what? I need to give them another chance. Forgiving. But that's part of the culture too. The Black culture, the Hispanic culture, the Asian culture. It's a part of family. You take care of family. Yeah, they messed up. Give them another chance. Yeah, they messed up. Give them another chance. What they need to do, tough love. Tough love. You need to feel the pain of your consequences of your bad behavior, right? So that way you learn from that process. So hopefully you don't repeat the same bad behavior. But that doesn't happen in these cases until we did the recalls. The problem, like you mentioned earlier, about how they demonize you and villainize you is because you're speaking truth to power. They're not accustomed to that. This is rather unusual that someone's going to take them on in their own backyard. They claim ownership of this. That's why Barbara Lee was just kind of waltzing in, and she was supposed to be given the throne of the mayor of Oakland, and that is it. And no one should question it. No one should have any other doubts about it. It's a foregone conclusion. It's going to happen. No, the times they are changing. The recalls have changed everything at this point moving forward.
Well, I think that, I mean, I know that they have, but I really hope that this victory holds. But even if it doesn't, then they will know that they barely squeak by. There's no mandate there,
Right.
and that it does not. I fear for Oakland if that happens, but at least the entire blame can be had with the progressives, and they can own it all. They can't confuse anyone.
Right.
All right.
And I like to say extreme, ultra radical progressives, because there are some well-intentioned, well-meaning progressives, because they see the root word. The root word is progress.
I know,
And
but we
I
don't
would
use it
sign up.
anymore. They
I would
ruined
sign
it.
up. I would sign up for being a progressive because it says progress. And I think that I am progress oriented, right? So a lot of people say, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. No, it's not that there's something wrong inherently with the word or the meaning of it. It's how it's been co-opted and hijacked and misused. And what they're doing is doing a bait and switch. Please believe in me because, hey, I'm one of you. But are they really? Look at their policies. Look at the results on the streets. The results do not lie. So people during the Pam Price, during the Shane Tao, they looked around the streets, and anyone who knows is worth a grain of salt knows better that in all the years that they've been in Oakland, it's never been this bad, ever. So you cannot deny that because you're living with that day in and day out. And that's where they could not spin it anymore. And people said, enough is enough. We've had it. So it's time for change. Change for what? Change for the better. Change for the better. Because they try to talk about change, but it doesn't necessarily mean change for the better, because it can get worse.
Well, that change has not been for the better, and they seem to be very comfortable with it. But I will
It's
say
been going down.
Is I don't
Change
know.
for the better for their personal agenda, though. Let's clarify. Because let's look at Nikki Bass, failed upwards. Council president, just as bad, if not worse than Shane Tao. And she got a promotion to Alameda County Board of Supervisors. Who does that? Who gets that?
Well,
that's the power of special interests in the political machine driving them.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. You're saying we beat them, but to me, I don't know if we beat them because they're still able to fail forward in the incestuous politics in the Bay Area. California is continuing, especially outside of Oakland. I mean, our school board, we haven't even began to try to reform the school board yet, and it looks like the teachers union, the various education unions have completely captured the school board, and that every single person on it, with maybe the exception of Mike Hutchinson, either currently works for or has worked for the union as a union operative, not like a rank and file member or steward.
Yeah. And let's clarify that so that people understand where we're coming from. You have a union organizing background. I do too. I worked with national, international unions. And I do believe in the concept of what a union can bring to America. And that's what people keep signing up for. But we're talking about a different story here where they've lost their way. And that is
public sector unions too, which are
the public sector unions and the union leadership tied to a national agenda that is disconnected from what's happening here on the ground, the local issues that are destroying Oakland.
Well,
That's what we're talking about.
Let's talk about the unions. The unions, as you guys all know, we've talked about this several times, have spent a lot of money. And I'll bring up while Edward is answering my question, I'll bring up the chart and share our screen. But give me your thoughts, your rundown on the union trying to buy an election for Cara Murray Badal, hopefully I got her name correct, and
Yeah.
Charlie Wang being declared the winner, 2-1, crushing her. Harold Lowe getting third place. Kenita, after all of that campaigning and work and visibility, getting pretty surprisingly less than 1,000. Although we have more votes to count, so probably get over 1,000 when it's done. What are your thoughts and breakdown on District 2 while I bring up this chart with the money?
Well, District 2, people don't realize how it was downplayed. But District 2, which is going to be on the, what is it, the southeastern part of the Lake Merritt and going up into the hills, Trestle Glen, Crocker Highland, and then coming back down. And then 23rd is the border over there. And then it kind of follows around 880, goes up Broadway up to 14th Street, and then cuts across on the other side of the courthouse onto 12th, and then follows that path of the lake once again up towards the hills. So how important is D2? Wow, very important, because that could determine the majority vote for the council. And that means that these failed policies can be turned around. That means that accountability time for the unions for their contracts that are destroying sustainability factors for Oakland driving into bankruptcy. Like they could work towards renegotiating these contracts and make it sustainable so that these workers can actually have jobs for many more years to come. Instead of the union leadership getting them, oh, I got the great contract for you, but then they get fired in 2 years. It's not acceptable, not acceptable. So we need to look at long-term, and we need to look at short-term and medium-term. We need to break it down very much in a common sense approach so that we can make it sustainable for all Oaklanders. And that's not what's happening. These folks that are at the helm of Oakland, they know not what they're doing. They are obviously focused on their hidden agendas and basically ulterior motives that are self-serving and benefit their political agendas and their careers. As you see, look what Nikki Bass did. Left Oakland as a dumpster fire in her rear view mirror, right? She couldn't leave fast enough. So we need to look at the type of character that these individuals bring to the table. A lot of the ones that did damage have no grassroots connection. They were not born and raised or been here a significant amount of time in Oakland. Go through the numbers, all of them outsiders. And I'm not saying an outsider can't come in and do some great things, but how is it align and line up perfectly? We could go through the numbers. Shane Tao from Stockton, right? Rebecca Kaplan from where? Canada. Right?
Carol
Canada.
Feist from Michigan, Nikki Bass is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Dan Calvich from Santa Cruz, Kevin Jenkins is from
LA, yeah.
Treva Reed is from Ohio, but Kevin Jenkins and Gallo and Ken Houston are all from Oakland, and Jonathan is from Oakland as well.
Right. So
let's look at this column, Carl Murray Badal for City Council 2025.
Yeah.
Local 21 and Local 1021 combined for over $300,000. Both of them have contracts that are up for negotiation pretty much right now. They're in bargaining. The contract expires June 31st of this year. What are your thoughts on unions contributing considerable amounts to elect city council members who then in turn vote on their compensation packages? Now, remember, you're pro-union guys here, and I personally, just for you out there, I've negotiated on behalf of SEIU 1021, and I first chair. First chair means you are completely responsible. You are the lead negotiator. Richmond?
Right. In my case, what's that?
No, never mind. I'm not going to name them all. I've probably done that before. But every East Bay city, as north as Richmond, as south as Fremont, and as east as San Ramon. So count up all the cities in there. I've also did Oakland Housing Authority and Alameda County Courts, the Port of Oakland, and some various nonprofits that I remember. So I've negotiated a lot of contracts, more than most people in this country.
Right.
It's a very skilled endeavor. I went to college, Cornell University School of Industrial Labor Relations, to learn the trade.
Right.
This is a lot of money. Unions weren't
Of
given
course
money
it
like
is.
this back when I
And
was.
it's constantly being replenished, constantly being replenished. And they're also using that money in political campaigns where the rank and file members know not what the union leadership are doing in behalf of their name. And that's where, you know, the other area where you're looking, you had folks in SEIU looking to decertify is because of that disgust that they've experienced, that they've had enough with being used and abused and played like little puppets. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes that, especially when they know that that's not what they signed up for. And the unions are doing this behind their back, behind closed doors. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. But my
Unacceptable.
background, what's that? Unacceptable. Yeah,
No,
my background.
Escobar, unacceptable.
That's correct. So my background, I come from outside, where I was an new basically alternative tip of the spear for labor movement, and basically it's grassroots driven. And I was collaborating. I was an outside collaborator with the national unions, and we were organizing against Uber, which is a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation, also Lyft, and the other tech titans of Silicon Valley. So we're talking about big boys, and I was just a David against Goliath. You know, that same scenario is repeated with us here with the politics in Oakland. So getting back to D2, the amount of money is direct proportion with the amount that they expect in return. They put in that investment that you think it's a lot of money. You can imagine how much multiplied they expect in return to keep things status quo, keep their union contracts that are bankrupting the city of Oakland in force and moving forward. So it's quid pro quo. I do for you, you do for me, but you owe me your existence in politics.
Let's hear it from a union member of SEIU 1021 themselves
Okay.
in a recent interview.
Trying to start our own union, man. We're not being supported. Business reps don't come around. We just, the people need representation. We're not getting it. They're putting money in, supporting these politicians, and they're going for layoffs. And the union is nowhere to be found. My name is Timothy Glasper, Glasper. Lived with the city of Oakland for 23 years. Former SEIU steward, former SEIU second vice president, former SEIU vice president. I understand how important a union is, and I'm willing to pay dues, but they have to earn my money. They have to work for it. I just didn't give it to them. I work hard for it just to give it away. Members are the union. We need to be member driven. We don't need someone downtown trying to tell us what we need. We need to tell them what we need, and they need to focus on getting our needs met.
So that is from Timothy Glasper, who was there as a steward when I was the East Bay director at this point, 12 years ago for SEIU 1021. And he's still working there, a longtime member, been with the city forever. And you hear him, he told me they spent more on Sheng than they had in the bank.
Right, and they never agreed to Sheng to be their chosen person and that as a candidate.
None of them. None of them. So it's very alarming, to say the least. We have this quid pro quo in public sector labor unions when it comes to matters of city financial solvency. And now we're on the brink of bankruptcy. We know that there needs to be some talks with the unions about compensation. And you know, it's mixed feelings because I like having good compensation. We should have good. What I want is the actual staff back to work, working at full 100%.
Right.
Then I wouldn't be as concerned about paying top dollar if I got top dollar services. But we're not getting that in Oakland.
Right. We're not getting a return on the investment that's being made. And I think the operative word that people should really focus on is sustainability. Because you could get the top dollar contract, but if you can't sustain it, then that person's going to be fired in 1 or 2 years. So what's the point? What's the point is it's playing a game. It's creating the illusion that they're actually getting you something that you didn't have, but they don't care that it's only going to be short-lived because those organizers that they bring in, They rotate them in and rotate them out. Why? Because they're disconnected from the base. So forgive them, God, for they know not what they do. They don't stick around long enough to see what the outcomes of the contracts that were not negotiated in a sustainable manner. That's unacceptable, right? Look at the people that are suffering. Look at the people that are suffering for that. And that's something that we need to address. Having the foresight already, we've seen the pattern. If you do not learn from the past, then you're doomed to repeat it. What are you going to repeat? The worst part of it. The worst part of it.
Well,
and that's unfortunately what we've been dealt with. So getting back to the D2, very crucial in beginning the change of turning things around with council. That's why they threw so money in behind Cara. Cara was handpicked as Nikki Bass's puppet. She was the chosen one to succeed Nikki Bass. Well, Nikki Bass, to you, because you were not successful.
Can you blame
What's
it
that?
on Cara? If you want to run for office and people say we're going to help you and raise you money, you can't blame that on her, right? Isn't that like a little mean-spirited to blame it on her?
On Cara? No,
Yeah.
Cara's played. Look, Cara, I've seen her in action. Seems like a lovely woman. So it's not a personal thing. But when I see people and you hear about them dying in Oakland, you hear about the businesses dying, you hear about our communities dying, and you're seeing it. I'm sorry, this is not about personal feelings. This is about something for the greater good of Oakland. You need to put aside all of this nonsense and let's focus on getting down to business. We don't have the luxury of time. If we do not address this now, there is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow if nothing's done today.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a tough question here. You just referred to, and I'm asking myself the same. I like to be self-critical here. You said that she is a token of the union, and I don't disagree. If you were in a government position or position of power, and you said that in a meeting and someone wrote it down, what makes us different here than Leah Hansen and Brandon Harami and Carol Fife, who are referring to Black people as tokens?
Well, the reality is they're the perpetrators of the tokenization. And then they project that onto the opposition. And they play the game of victim, victim. And they think in their echo chamber that no one's going to push back against them. So then their soundbite is going to win the day. Well, no more, because there's a new sheriff in town. We've come on the scene and we're affecting change like never before. And thank you to all the Oaklanders and all the supporters that have come out and can see when real, it doesn't get any more real than this. And they want to try to say what they say.
I get it. I'm just saying, you get what I'm saying, though. I would say we should be careful about calling other people's tokens, too. Now, if I was in a position of influence or government, I would not be using city time to plot on taxpayers. I would let my defense. I would let my defense.
What they did, that's illegal. That's illegal, though, what she did to be organizing her recall strategy on company time. That's taxpayers' time. You can't do that. What part of that you don't understand?
I 1,000% agree with you. So we're going to wrap it up. I just want to bring that to let people know that we do think about these things, and not that we're second guessing ourselves, but you need to hold yourselves accountable and always make sure that you're not being reactionary and losing yourself in the heat of battle when you're fighting dishonest and immoral people. Because then again, that is my opinion. And so if I take the moral high ground that they're dishonest and immoral, and therefore I'm allowed to do whatever I can to take them out in the name of revolution, I'm no different than they are. And so the reason I say that is I'm always willing to have a debate on facts and logic, to be challenged and to change my map and expand my map with the arrival of new information that may give me better and more credible information, or even prove some of the things that I believe were right to be wrong and move forward in power, and that is what integrity is. Integrity is not just always saying, not always being honest. There is an inherent dishonesty of believing that you're perfect or the moral high ground. And so I always say, I don't believe that I'm right. I do what I believe is right. And I always allow for the fact that I could be wrong. And all I ask for is an intellectual debate in front of the people who we mean to serve, to let them decide which ideas they would like to follow. We can't get that.
Not here right now.
Not
But
here
we
right
have
now.
we have changed the whole playing field. So now we are creating an environment where we can start to get that. And just to quote Martin Luther King, he stated, "The time is always right to do what's right. The time is always right to do what's right." Very simple, but very powerful words. And we should live by that as best as we can. As you said, nobody's perfect, but strive for perfection, aspire to the higher heights. And Martin Luther King was a prime example of that. Malcolm X as well. So we need to look at those who came before us and the wisdom that they left us with, and we need to put that into action, not just say it, we need to live it. We need to do it. We need to practice it.
So you're going to have me end with an MLK quote. Never, never be afraid to do what's right, especially if the well-being of a person or animal is at stake. Society's punishments are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our soul when we look the other way. Thank you, Edward, for your bravery and not looking away. Peace, Oakland. I love you. Take it easy. See you next time on Gotham, Oakland. You going to say goodbye, Edward?
Well, thank you for having me.
Peace.
Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here. Yo, I swear it's only up from here.